Hello, this is not a time lapse. This is real time, scribing at a live event, graphic recording, live illustration, whatever you want to call it. My computer needed to be restarted right before the event, but luckily we logged in early, so that wasn't an issue. If you'd like something like this at your next event, get in touch. We love talking about your projects and events. See you soon. Bye.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for Leadership in Focus, 5 Key Trends and Insights. So my name is Ariane Appleby-McQueenie and I look after our Executive Education Open programmes here at Warwick Business School. Tonight's talk will be joined by 5 distinguished speakers who will give their thoughts on the latest issues facing leaders today. They'll have 7 minutes for their talk, which will be followed by 2 minutes for you to feedback on how the talk resonated with you via our Menti poll. Because we are on quite a tight schedule, there won't be time for questions after each talk, but we will have time for 1 or 2 questions at the end, so once all the talks have taken place. You'll see here that we're joined by a live illustrator, so the lovely Katie will be illustrating the talks tonight, and that image will be shared with you after the session. So I hope you enjoy the talks, and it will be Dr. Dawn Eubanks who will be speaking first.
Turn on my microphone here, and got my stopwatch here as well, so we can try to keep to the time. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about communal leadership, your hot ticket to success. So communal leadership might be a term that you've heard of before, or it might be a new sort of term to you, but we're going to delve into it in the next 7 minutes here. So just pause for a minute and think about what makes a good leader. I'm not going to give you that long because we don't have very long, but there's kind of 2 things embedded in this question that come to people's minds when they reflect on it. So one might be the stereotype of what a leader is that we read about, maybe leaders that we see in the media, leaders that are quite distant from us. And the second thing that might come to our mind is an interaction that you personally had with a leader. So a real interaction or something that you've done as a leader. So those are the sorts of things that might come to your mind. And what I found with my MBA students over the years as I posed this question to them is that there's a real difference between the stereotype, the things that come to your mind when you imagine this leader out there somewhere, and the real interactions that you have with leaders and the things that you value in what they do. And I think that that's really interesting that there can be that distinction between those 2 things. So let me get into this a little bit more. So there's a couple main ways that we can talk about leadership. So there's agentic leaders. These are leaders that are really assertive, competitive, and goal-oriented. And this is maybe more in line with some of those stereotypes that we think about as associated with leadership. And then we have communal leaders. And these are leaders who prioritize relationships. They're really good at being empathetic and trying to be inclusive and trying to think about how to bring everybody along. Now, I'm not the one who has coined these terms. These terms have been around since the 1970s. So they've been out there for a long time. And they were adopted by leadership scholars in the 80s and 90s to try to talk about how people lead and how leaders can be effective. The perceptions of what makes an effective leader are shifting. And there's a couple of different things that I would attribute this to. So one is that we've got more women moving into leadership roles. And with that, there comes different ways of doing leadership. Women bring a different style to it. And then also with the pandemic, that brought a humanizing effect to the leadership role. That we were able to peer inside people's homes and see what their life was like. We got to see the children kind of running in the background and people trying to manage all these different things at once. And And so it made these leaders that maybe had seemed a bit more distant before seem much more real, much more personable and relatable. So that's another change that's happened. I put up here just a little chart about Fortune 500 CEOs. So we still have a long way to go in terms of women getting to these very top levels in organizations. You can see the trend is very slowly moving up there, but it's still below 10% of women who are in those top positions. However, when we look at other leadership positions in organizations, women are making much bigger strides, and we see a lot of women moving into leadership positions. So there's variation by the industry that you might find yourself in. So healthcare and education, we've got a lot more women in leadership roles in those sorts of organizations, whereas there's still fewer women in leadership positions in areas like tech, or finance, or energy and utilities. However, we've got women making up 42% of managerial positions overall. So it's increasing. So we've got this stereotypical association that happens then between these two leadership styles that I introduced, the communal leadership and the agentic leadership. And the communal leadership is associated with femininity, and agentic leadership is associated with masculinity, this taking charge kind of attitude. And I would argue that these distinctions and associating them with masculinity and femininity are really getting in our way. Because really, at the end of the day, these are all behaviors that we can all embrace to be effective leaders. So there is overlap between these things. It's not like it's a binary thing. There's overlap, but difference between the femininity and the masculinity around agentic and communal leadership. So when we have communal leadership, there's a real business case for it in terms of having reduced hierarchy, a culture of trust and collaboration, increased loyalty, and if men engage in communal leadership, they get an extra boost. So that's really important for men to realize, because I think sometimes men feel like, if I'm a leader and I'm a man, I need to be agentic. But if you embrace the communal stuff, you get a boost. People really like that. So it's a good thing to do. Agentic leadership on its own can come across as being really cutthroat, overly competitive, and it can create an unhealthy level of competition. 60% of employees say that women leaders improve workplace culture, but I would argue that it's this communal leadership that improves workplace culture, and that's something that's available to everybody. So my final thoughts, we need to redefine leadership in a way that transcends outdated gender stereotypes. We need to promote women who can embrace both aspects of leadership, the agentic and the communal, and we need to empower men to bring that communal side to the leadership role. It's time to break out of the mold. So thank you so much, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts.
So if you could feedback by the mentor part, how you felt Dawn's talk connected with your own experience, and we'll just have 2 minutes each.
That was so fast.
Okay, excellent. It seems like this idea is resonating with a lot of you. So it's maybe things that you've experienced. Good reminder. Yeah, it's a fairly basic concept. Absolutely.
They've done like a Mentimeter thing. So like people in the room. This is in the Shard in London, but they're in the room.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you all
just giving
so
feedback.
much.
Can you see very well? It's a bit far away, but they can see my screen all the time, so I don't want to zoom in or out. Okay. Dr. Ekaterini Grimani.
Good afternoon, everyone. So let me begin with a quote
Turn it back on.
by Marcus Aurelius. Obstacles do not block the path, they are the path. So this quote perfectly captures the spirit of this specific topic. The idea is at the heart of adaptive leadership in today's rapidly evolving environment. The most successful leaders are not those who avoid obstacles, but those that actually learn from them and adapt. So why adaptive leadership? Well, the thing is that we live in a world marked by uncertainty, disruption, complexity. So traditional leadership often fails in rapidly changing environments. But we can say that adaptive leadership embraces uncertainty and change, and it enables proactive, flexible, and innovative responses. It's not like a toolkit. It's like a mindset. So it is a way of thinking and behave. Fosters a culture of experimentation and learning, and empowers teams to adapt and innovate. The 5 principles that we have in adaptive leadership. So encourage collaboration. What that means, think about the COVID period that we needed to breaking down silos and building cross-functional teams. So during that period, that the vaccine rollout, governments, healthcare providers came together to solve an urgent matter like this. So we built cross-functional teams with diverse perspectives, foster open communication and share ownership, and mobilize collective action for complex problems. Commit to ongoing learning. It's another principle that we have in adaptive leadership, because we embrace continuous feedback, use both success and failure as growth opportunities, and address root causes for long-term solutions. Think about Japan and about Kaiser, the continuous improvement. So this is exactly what is about, to embrace continuous feedback. With resilience, balance autonomic agility with long-term vision and enable recovery from setbacks and sustained performance. Foster trust and accountability, acknowledge mistakes and invite feedback. And last but not least, navigate resistance and uncertainty. That means change can create discomfort and resistance. However, communicate the value of flexibility is very important for adaptive leadership. So the insights to impact, these are not just ideas, they are practical strategies that we can actually transform how we lead. So adaptive leadership builds organizations that are innovative, inclusive, and better prepared for what comes next. So it is shifted from control to influence, from top-down answers to top-up engagement. So the thing is that what I want to take after this presentation is the ability to adapt, to learn, to empower others, to lead through uncertainty will be most valuable leadership assets for you. So, food for thought, what's one principle of adaptive leadership you could apply this week? Thank you.
So the Menti code is the same one as the person, so you don't need to scan the QR code again if you've already got it.
This is good actually, this sort of Mentimeter time is giving me a chance to catch up because that was fast.
Did you see all these fancy keywords?
What is it? Navigating resistance.
Representing what exactly
Let's do a little
we said right now.
Should we go to the 3G? Is it not working? I'm just checking.
Okay, resistance. Ah, jeez.
Great, thank you. So we'll have our
Thank
next
you.
speaker.
They are timely. Oh, I think it's not that one. Is it this one? Yes.
Next, we're joined by Sean Collier, who is one of our current DBA students and currently completing his Doctor of Business Administration class.
Perfect, thank you. So, I, like many of you in the room, are a practitioner dealing with lots of leadership challenges. I come here to listen to esteemed colleagues and hear what they say. So I'm going to start, and actually I hadn't actually seen the other slides prior to, so in fact from adaptive leadership, you immediately start talking about empower others. It's exactly what we're going to be talking about in my presentation. So my job, I'm a Chief Information Officer for Trading Technologies within Deutsche Bank, based here in London in Canary Wharf. As I said, I'm in my fourth year, so I've spent the past 4 years studying empowerment in financial services. So really what I'm trying to understand is how the leaders make sense of things that other senior leaders do and how that undermines or enforces the empowering leader behaviours that they're trying to encourage in their leaders beneath them. So the rationale, large organisations, we're always set, increase revenue, improve productivity, AI, productivity. The digital economy requires more skilled people, more IT professionals, more AI professionals. And as that organisations become flatter, they require more and more people to make decisions. They can't rely on a small number of people to make decisions as they move forward. Some organisations describe it as critical for business survival, that is to empower their teams. So senior leadership always voice support for empowerment. I think it's very rare. If I move this forward 1 second. So they will voice support for empowering leader behaviour to support their people empowering for the purpose of getting that increased productivity. Yet it's been proven that leaders do fail to behave at times with empowering leader behaviour. So the question is, why is it? What's the obstacle? What's the thing that's getting in the way? And the question I'd ask you, is it possible that the senior leadership, in their pursuit of the empowerment goals, are actually encouraging or possibly paradoxically disencouraging the empowering leader behaviours that it tries to inspire? So to answer that question, we asked people. And I really boiled this down into 3 pieces. One of necessity, one of enigma, and one of reality and illusion. These are the themes that came out. So it probably doesn't take much to actually convince people of necessity. So we've got creativity, leader effectiveness, performance, task performance, commitment, job satisfaction. Yeah, we'll all have a slice of that. Team effects, individual effects. But if I can leave you with one effect that you should worry about, it's about talent retention and talent attraction. If you go out and hire the best people in industry, they'll want to be empowered. If you don't empower them, you'll frustrate them. If you frustrate them, they'll leave. So empowering leader behaviour by encouraging the behaviours of empowerment is critical.
It's going so fast.
So secondly, empowering behaviour is described as an enigma. Not necessarily by the people. They don't describe it as enigma themselves. Leaders don't say it's particularly complex. I didn't think it was complex, but I spent the past 4 years realising it is. It's Pandora's box. When they ask to describe leadership, they throw the kitchen sink at it. We have lots of terms: delegating, motivating, autonomy, self-determination, self-leadership, participative management, enablement. All these words get mixed together when you ask someone to explain empowerment. There are multiple factors, as you can see on this slide. So individual differences, the leader's psychological sense of empowerment, what the followers think, what their senior leadership think, what the culture's like, what the history of the organisation's like. So when you want to pull that empowerment lever, you've got to consider that all these things come into play. And we can't fix all these things simultaneously. You can't change the culture immediately. You can't change someone's individual differences because that's based upon their experience and their background. But there are some things you can change. This is a very, hopefully, simple picture to explain what empowerment looks like.
That's not simple.
So let's define it. 2 schools of thought. Empowerment is a psychological sense of meaning, competence, self-determination, impact. If I feel these things, then I am effectively feeling empowered. The effect, the cause of that effect, is the empowering leader behaviour. And whilst you can see quite a long list, 7 or 8 items on the left-hand side, really that boils down into 2 categories: autonomy support and providing developmental support. Now, the other dimension here is that a leader is also a follower. A leader is the follower of their manager and the leader of the people beneath them. So a leader is also affected by the psychological empowerment of how they feel empowered as well. So if you affect their psychological empowerment, effectively you're going to affect how they empower others. So now we turn our attention to signals. So what are these signals? These are the things that senior leadership are doing. And we have to think about when they do something, how does it affect these things we just talked about? How does it affect this sense of self-determination? How does it affect this sense of impact or competence in there? And I'll give you one example. Let's take the case where we actually centralise decision-making. If senior leadership is centralising decision-making, how does that make me feel as a leader? What sense of self-determination do I think I have, the choice of making those decisions? What sense of impact do I think I'm making if those decisions are being made by someone else? What sort of is saying about my competence? It makes me feel that they don't think I'm competent. If I feel those things, turning to the left-hand side of this diagram, how do I therefore delegate? How do I delegate a decision-making for a decision I'm not making? How do I encourage and inspire communication about decisions that are taken away from me? So these signals may be small. It may not be one incident, but over time, the more and more signals that are sent that start to deviate from the expectation of the individuals, the less and less that they will feel empowered. So it's important to understand these signals and understand these impacts of these signals on the individuals. So in conclusion, with 1 minute to go, thank you. In conclusion, if you hire the brightest and the best, they will or should expect to be empowered. They will make sense, they will interpret, they will discuss amongst their peers. They will draw conclusions. This will affect their sense of empowerment and their propensity to empower others. So maybe saying you're going to empower and then failing to empower by doing these things that undermine what you're trying to achieve, maybe it's worse than not saying you're going to empower in the first place. So we need improved productivity. We have a shortage of talent. So organisations must empower their employees to increase effectiveness and retain talent, as we said at the outset. So whilst leaders do want to feel empowered, they say they want to be empowered, and organisations claim to support this, the mixed messages from senior leadership can create confusion and can disempower. So by better understanding what drives empowerment, the pictures I showed earlier, the constituents of empowerment, maybe we can adjust the signals to make sure we encourage the behaviours rather than discourage them. Thank you. That's all.
Good, yeah. I don't feel like that went well at all. But I did put that screenshot. What did it say? Let's go for meaning, competence.
Oh, all right. Okay. Hello, everybody. I decided to make a mistake and give myself 2 things in both hands, so I cannot really talk with my hands, which I really like to do sometimes. So I'll do something like that sometimes. But so today I'm going to talk about, they're thinking about where your perspectives come from. Like, so how do you think about other people and yourself sort of within the social fabric of things? So first of all, I'd like to ask you to think about your social circle. So people you kind of tend to hang out with, your family, your friends, sort of, your co-workers, and think about how many people make less than £40,000. How many people do not have a university education or qualification whatsoever, meaning they never finished school at all? How many people are more than 10 years away from you either way, so either older or younger? Just think about a couple of seconds just to kind of visualize that. Well, what we know is that we actually tend to be surrounded by similar others. We hang out with people with similar incomes, similar class, similar education, similar gender. Basically, we sort of exist in this world that are actually very, very like us. So why is this important? Well, because that affects how we see the world. So effectively, because we cannot actually observe everything, right? We cannot go out and figure out how the UK population actually looks like, or the population of the world. So we tend to use information that we have, and that information tends to be on social circles. So when we think about UK population, for example, again, think about what is the median income of the UK? How many people have a university degree in the UK? How many people don't have or have qualifications? And is there more 30-year-olds than 50-year-olds? Okay? So again, thinking about your social circle and how that affects how you think about these questions. Well, I'm going to tell you that the median income in the UK is 37,400, which you cannot see on this graph, which you didn't realize. But this is from the Office of National Statistics. So that number of £40,000, this is actually the median income. So you don't have a lot of people who make that. This is 50% of the population of the UK. About 34% have bachelor's degrees or higher, so meaning that about a third of the UK population has a higher degree. I'm pretty sure all of you have a university degree, and the vast majority of people that you know do, but only a third of UK population does. And are there more 30-year-olds or 50-year-olds? Well, about the same actually, about 4,015,000 of 30 to 34-year-olds according to ONS, and about 4,012,000 of 50 to 54-year-olds. Again, because we tend to be surrounded by similar others, we actually would have people that are very similar to us in age as well. Well, effectively, what research shows us is that our social circles are defined by homophily, which is this tendency to connect to similar others. And that has to do with how we choose to interact with people, but also actually something that we don't choose. Our gender, our nationality, our class that tends to be defined by our parents. And that affects how we see the world around us. We actually tend to think that everybody's like us. That people tend to think like us, but they don't. And how then does this homophily affect your worldview? Right? So how does this happen effectively? Well, a way to think about this is to think about a very, very simple way of how people make judgments and decisions. They have this information comes in from the environment, so stuff that you're surrounded with, right? You're trying to figure out how many people in the UK make £40,000. And you're trying to think, well, I know this and this people, and I'm trying to figure out how many do I have. But then you also process this information. So it has to go through the memory, it has to go through kind of perceptive systems, maybe through some sort of identity systems, how I feel about this information coming in, and so on and so forth. And then you end up going for the judgment. So before you even process any of the information, it has to be shaped by something. And it's shaped by homophily. It's shaped by this idea that we get information from people that are similar to us. Well, what happens, right? Well, it basically shapes the way we believe others believe. So what we think others think, right? So effectively it can lead to false consensus. I sort of mentioned this already, but it's a belief that we think that how other people think is the same to us, right? I think this, well, it's probably likely that the vast majority of people think this. Well, I think that is the cause of these two very controversial ad campaigns. There was a group of people that thought this was interesting and cool, and then they didn't realize there were other people who didn't think that was interesting and cool, and it ended up in a controversy. So this was a Gucci campaign that was criticized for blackface, and it was a Pepsi campaign that was criticized for sort of diminishing the protests that were happening at the time. And another thing can happen is that homophily will shape our beliefs of others. So how I feel and think about others. So research shows us that because we're more connected to people who are like us, that leads to others, sort of the people from our group, improving the first negative impression. So I might meet people like me, and at first I didn't like them, but then because I tend to interact with people like that, I just, correct that over time, which just doesn't happen with people from outside of my group. I would also think that they're more varied and individual because I tend to just meet different people. They do different things. They all look very different. And if I don't actually meet a lot of people who don't look like me or don't, live in the same world, I wouldn't think that they have individual experiences. And homophily will lead to polarization within the social networks, right? So basically being connected to similar others, you're more likely to agree with them. And what would happen is that you're surrounded by these people who look like you and they tell you, no, you should do this, you should believe that, through social pressure, through social feedback of saying, no, don't do that, this is not a good thing to do. Or also just providing you with arguments and information that will persuade you much more than people who don't have that link to you and providing that information. So the takeaway that I would like you to have is thinking about what are the networks am I embedded in? How does my social circle look like? How homophilous is it? How many people who are not like me do I have in it? And if I have a lot of people who are like me, how does that affect how I see the world that others live in? The people that work for me, my clients, my customers, right? And can you think of a time when, as a leader, you unknowingly thought that other people are just like you, and they think like you, and that wasn't correct, and it led to some sort of business impact that you didn't anticipate? That's the takeaway. Thank you.
Very good.
Be a live commentary. But this is very thought-provoking. Apparently, scary. Don't be scared. It's okay. It's all gonna be okay. My point is sort of trying to step away from your own brain and just sort of think about, okay, how do I tend to think about these things? And sometimes we do forget to do that. Algorithms work in real life too. Correct. We're surrounded by structures that define how we see the world.
How's it going? I feel like this is very boring to watch, but I'm enjoying that there's a little break. There's only one more talk to go, and because I did lots of planning, oh, you really can. I get closer, don't I? You can see I have enough space in the top right to do my last talk,
Hello, beautiful people.
Checking I was on mute.
How are you
And they
today?
have like a call to action at the end because it's a
I
business
tell
school.
you this, I wish
They
every
sort of
time I
advertise.
teach, people sit in front of me with a glass of wine. My job would be much more easier. So most of the stuff that I'll share with you today, I wish I was too busy, come mainly from my research with high-performing teams, as well as my engagement with executives across our various executive programs that we teach. But before I do that, why you? And I only have 7 minutes, so you have a couple of seconds to respond. Why you? That's the obvious question. We're looking for the second most obvious question. So why you guys? How are you prepared to answer the question? Passion, very good, because I have passion. What about you, my friend?
Being young, new perspective.
Fantastic. What about you? Fantastic. And you? Second? Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So it's not uncommon. Wherever I go, irrespective of country organizations, when we ask people, why should people be led by you? People start out because everything that you say, and that's quite normal. What's really beautiful about this piece of work is rather than asking what make us leaders, they ask what people that are led need from the leaders. And what they found is what they really want is some sort of authenticity. Leaders should come across as real, but also they like to be led by people who are able to make the work significant, meaningful, exciting, and create a sense of togetherness, yeah? Which is quite an interesting set of skills, although we don't have time to talk too much about this. But building on this, those themes are becoming more and more relevant in today's environment. But what motivated me writing this session today here was a quote. This is a quote that emerged from my own research. Obviously, this is not the poor soul that said it, but I'm working harder than ever, but I've never felt more invisible. How many of us can resonate with this term? Loosely. You don't have to raise hands. You keep it for yourself. Yeah. Which made me think that in this day and age, maybe we don't just need leadership to navigate complexity and change, but also we might need leadership to create some sense of belonging. And why do we do what we're doing? Yeah, so I would like to talk to you about those two themes. So what emerges from our research, primarily with high-performing teams, is that creating a sense of belonging is what we call the forgotten power of leadership. What really matters for many people across diverse settings, different industries, organizations, and so forth, is how much they feel are seen, heard, as well as being part of something that is meaningful, something that's meaningful to them as well as others. I only have 3 minutes, yeah, Michael? So what this means for us is that as leaders, we should ask, how can we create this culture where people are safe to speak up, feel that they belong into something, and so forth. But in addition to that, belonging is just one part of the equation. The second, and perhaps the most difficult thing, is creating the emotional why. Why are we setting a new vision? Why is that important for me as a leader, for you as an employee, for them as the shareholders, for the planet, for future generations, and so forth? So creating that meaningful why is becoming more and more difficult. But what we've learned, and this is an interesting resource here, the State of the Global Workplace by Gallup, those that get this right can see increase in performance by 56%, only by getting this right, yes? And innovation by 75%. What this means for us, this means that we need to embrace 3 shifts from authority to authenticity, for direction to co-creation, and from performance, focus, belonging first. So what we do with our efforts to develop capacity for leadership with our executive offerings, when we're talking about creating future-ready leaders, we spend a lot of time, 1 minute, I'm done, to kind of focus on, it's important to ignite belief, it's important to create some sense of belonging, but also not just give meaning, but allow people to co-construct meaning with you. Giving meaning is easy. But then creating people, bringing people on board to give them the opportunity to create something meaningful for them, this is where things are becoming difficult. So basically what I'm saying, rather than looking for buyers into your vision, your mission, your change, try to look for investors, people that can invest in what you try to do. And with this in mind, I think, thank you very much indeed for joining us today here. And don't be shy. See, it's the wine effect, no? That's why I should incentivize my students to come in with a glass of wine. Give them a bottle next time.
There's still 20 minutes left, so I think it will be the CTA, like the join the business school bit. But then I don't know, let's see, like calendar invite. Huh.
Fascinating, thank you. Thanks a lot.
It says it goes till 8 o'clock.
And then, so yes, I think if I try to do justice to what my lovely colleagues said so far, leadership is not easy. If it was easy, you wouldn't be here. No. So basically, in this day and age, to get the most out of people, your employees, employers, shareholders, this and that, it's important to remember that it pays to lead with empathy. It pays to stay adaptive. I think 3 years ago with COVID, then came the war, now we have AI. God knows what we're going to deal with tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Try to empower others, seek diverse views, and try to create some strong sense of belonging. Not easy, but hey, who doesn't want a challenge? Yes. So yes, that's kind of my 1 minute summary. So building on this, if you like what you heard, please join us. This is a QR code for you where you can understand how we kind of develop our executive experience. If you haven't felt inspired, bring them more wine, please. So again, I would like to kind of, in a cheeky way, take this opportunity to promote some of our recent executive programs. And this couldn't come at a better time. In a very selfish, institutional way. We just got the news from the FT. We just broke into the top 20 globally exec programs for open programs. So thank you. Thank you. So here is a list of recent programs that we developed, trying to engage with a number of different themes. The strategic mindset of leadership, where we take a deep dive to help people like yourselves understand how can I create time to think strategically about what I do, as well as carry on doing my job. Because typically people say to us, we're not paid to think, we're paid to deliver. But then those of you that are able to stop and think and deliver, you get the bonus, yeah? So one of the main focus on this particular program is how can you remain agile, think about today, think about the future, and add value to yourself, your team, your organization, and a different set of stakeholders, including shareholder, planet, and so forth. And then building on this, we have another program specifically on what does it mean to lead for a very complex world. We take a deep dive on a number of different themes, including leadership, strategy, agility, ambiguity, to give you the tools that you need to help you make sense of nonsense, if I may. Then we are very proud to throw into the market our two flagship executive programs, both for senior executives who feel the need to come back to education to refresh their thinking, redevelop their DNA for the future, as well as our emerging leaders program, where our ambition there is to work with young professionals who have aspirations to move to the strategic apex of the organization, and we work with them to accelerate their leadership development. Obviously, Arion is looking at me saying it's about time to wrap up. So please come and ask questions. Fantastic. There you go. Questions? Yes, sir. Actually, you can press this button here. Yes, you are there, yes. I'm getting a bit deaf, so I'm not able to listen. Yeah, I think you need to, can you go one more time? Give it one more. No? Try again. That's fine. Sorry. It's always me.